We're continuing to look at how to set up an observational research project. In the previous video, we looked at the degree of structure. So is it structured or unstructured? Are we simply writing down everything we observe? Or have we created a checklist of observations and times we want to collect because we know enough about the process and what people do in order to look for it in our observations? We talked about degree of disguise. Is it open so people know they are being observed? Or do they not know they're being observed? And the trade-off for the Hawthorne effect, changing behavior because they're being observed versus our ethical requirements of informed consent. In this particular video, we're going to look at setting, natural or contrived, and we're going to look at the time of behavior. Are we watching people as the activity occurs, or are we looking at evidence of a previous activity? So let's dive into setting. As I scroll through our slides here. All right, when it comes to the setting, it can be natural. That is, we are observing behavior where that behavior typically takes place. Alternatively, we have contrived, where we create the environment and then we ask people to do what they would normally do in that environment. So, for example, we could create 2 aisles in what looks like a grocery store. So maybe we take an empty bay in the mall and we create this little mini version of a grocery store by creating just a couple aisles. We bring people in and we simulate the shopping process and we observe their behavior when they're picking out their particular products. Alternatively, your contrived method could be virtual reality. You put on some virtual reality glasses and you move through the grocery store in that virtual reality. So we can simulate that supermarket or that environment, but it's not the real full thing. The benefit of contrived is that we can better control outside influences. So we can limit things that might distract or cause people to behave differently than they normally would by simplifying it to just the part we care about. The downside, of course, is because it's not natural that people may not behave the way they would in real life. And so there's an issue with validity. Validity being, would people act the same way in the real world? So in that contrived, subjects are observed in an environment that has been specifically designed for their behavior. But if they're not going to behave the same way they would in real life, then there's no point in doing that. There's nothing actually gained. The benefit of the contrived with creating this kind of simulation is that we can do more observations in the same length of time because we can bring people in order to do that particular behavior, as opposed to waiting for someone to come into the grocery store and happen to walk down the aisle that we care about. So maybe that's the soup aisle. So we got to choose natural or contrived. What gives us the level of detail and information that we need? What is more likely to give us information that reflects reality? And at the same time, what is more cost effective in terms of the number and the sample size? So the next thing to consider is whether we have direct observation or indirect observation. So all the examples we've been giving so far are really direct observation. We are watching people as they do the particular activity. Another example of direct observation is ethnographic research. And this term comes from anthropology, where the researcher would go live among the indigenous population to observe what they do. So when we talk about observational research, it's not just for marketing and business, but we're talking about observing people and the things that they do. So this might be in terms of anthropology to understand differences in culture, customs, and so you go and you live among the people. In comparison, we have indirect observational research. Indirect observational research is where we're observing past behavior. So we're looking for evidence that things happened in the past. An example of indirect observation would be garbology. Garbology is where you go through someone's garbage to analyze their consumption patterns. So we could dig through someone's garbage and see what kind of food they eat, what kind of products they buy. Okay? So we're looking for evidence of past events or behavior. The dustbin check is a bit of a cleaner approach. So rather than digging through someone's garbage, what we could do is we could ask them to put specific products in a container if they use those particular products. So we could say, okay, well, anytime you drink soda during the week, please put the soda cans in this special bin. And then the researcher comes by, they collect the bin. That will tell us how many cans of soda that household buys and what brands they buy. It's a cleaner approach because we're not having to dig through all the garbage to find the things that we're looking for. So the person who is being observed is helping to put those containers or wrappers or whatever it is into a collection bin. A third type of indirect is an audit. So here we're sifting through paper, receipts, to see what was purchased. So we could do an audit, for example, of the company and see what products were sold on Mondays, what products were sold on Tuesdays. So we could look at sales, we could look at product flow. We could find out in terms of how much of a different product moved, what time of day it was sold, and so on. So we can go through the receipts, whether that's retail, looking at sales to final customers, whether that's wholesale, looking at products movement from one company to the next. We could be looking at the information systems that manage the supply chain to look at the movement of inventory. We can also, in the cashier system, right, we scan things to check out. That keeps a record. And so we know how many units, how many kilos of flour we've moved this week. So if you want to give it a try, these types of observational research. So first, take some time today and dig through a garbage can in your house. What does that say about your household? What are they consuming? How frequently? What can you interpret about the household's behavior based on what you're seeing in the garbage can? And to practice some ethnographic research. With our ethnographic research, remember this is the study of human behavior. This is in a natural context, right? We are observing people in their environment. It is direct, and so it is going to include observations of behavior and the physical setting that they're in. And behavior of observation of behavior and physical setting. So typically if you're doing ethnographic research, there's someone who kind of lets you into the group, some kind of informant that introduces you to everyone else, that allows you in to be among everyone else. So if you're going to practice some ethnographic research, have someone that you know invite you in to a conversation with other people that you may not know. And what you'd want to do is you want to listen to their conversations, observe what it is they're doing and how they interact. And so typically with ethnographic research, it would be unstructured. We would be writing down everything that we observe. And then we are doing a bit of that cut, sort, arrange, where we are looking for themes and patterns. What kind of phenomenon do we see? And what kind of statements or behaviors back up those different themes. We would check our findings against what other people say and similar research as well. In our last video, which we will do next, we will talk about different approaches to observational research if we're going to use machines. Up until this point in these videos, we've really been focusing on humans observing other humans or humans observing some kind of phenomenon. But there's also a lot of technology to help have machines observe humans and observe events. And so in our next video, we'll go through some of that different technology.